Mr. Case, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Sims and Mr. Costa, I have my own critical project in my district, not just for Hawaii, but for the entire Pacific Islands veterans system, and that is the Advanced Leeward Outpatient Healthcare Access Project. We call it the Aloha Project. Like my colleagues, this project has been in the works for years and years and years. It was hung up for years in terms of some lease approvals. It is appropriated, it is authorized, it is good to go. It needs one more congressional approval, and that's the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. It already has the approval. From the Senate side, our understanding from your VA Pacific Islands healthcare system is that once we get that approval, the process is good to go within weeks. Can you assure me that that's still the case?
I'm going to ask Mr. Costa to address the timeline on that one.
Congressman, I'm happy to tell you. I tell this story often. First meeting I had when I moved from the General Services Administration to the VA on August 6th, 2018 was about your project. It's taken way too long. The market caught up with us because we were too slow, and we had to go back and request an increase in rental rates. What we dealt with for about 18 months is the internal government process of ensuring that the new terms would score as an operating lease. And that was what we spent, frankly, 18 months doing. We are really happy that the offerors that put bids in a couple of years ago, I don't want to be overly dramatic, have stuck with us. So from our standpoint, as soon as the House Committee, Transportation Infrastructure, passes a resolution, we are good to go. And we will be about 30 to 45 days from award as soon as that happens.
That's great news, Mr. Costa. I really appreciate your staying with that throughout. Let me talk about some of the big picture issues that have been raised by my colleagues. And the first one I would start with is the projection, Mr. Sims, of somewhere in the range of $49 to $59 billion of kind of, if you were to take the projects that were above the line. I think your testimony is above line, meaning, hey, we got to do these now. And you're costing those at 49 to 59. As you know, President Biden is very focused on an infrastructure package in the range of trillions of dollars. Is there consideration being given within the administration to include the VA that we would try within that massive, once in a long time COVID-19 economic generation related initiative to include out of cycle in the normal appropriation cycle VA infrastructure needs? Is that part of the discussion, or do you think it should be part of the discussion?
Short answer is yes, it is part of the discussion. What I would say is the $49 to $59 billion is both things that we need to do, but realistically, some of those are what we would refer to as out-year projects, things that we're not necessarily ready to do right now because of other dependencies or other priorities. So the below the line is more about the immediate need. And as the chairwoman noted, we can't even fund all of the immediate need things in some cases. So we're looking at holistically what of that 49 to 59, as well as other recapitalization ideas that would fit within a potential infrastructure bill. And the rationale from us is very simple, is VA is not just a federal entity. It's a backbone for the American healthcare system. As we've seen with the pandemic and the reliance upon VA for fourth mission support as a backup to the public healthcare, there's a critical need there to make sure the infrastructure can support it. As a number of you have mentioned too, we hit a huge number of communities and locations across the country that look at both job development and ongoing operations and maintenance of those facilities. There's a lot of reason to look at VA as a core to the national infrastructure need, and we are moving that direction when it comes to a large-scale infrastructure bill.
Thank you very much for that. And I want to emphasize what you just said, because I think that's really, really critical as you do try to prioritize in President Biden's infrastructure package. And I know the people on this committee I think would be pretty strongly supportive of that. But the VA system throughout our country is one part of the overall healthcare system. And I would emphasize that right here in Hawaii, where we don't have the luxury of maintaining, critical across the board healthcare delivery in all of our VA system, our armed services system, and our private healthcare system. We've got to be able to work together across lines. And so it's critical that we think about VA as part of that broader continuum. So I really encourage that thinking. Thank you very much. Yeah, Mr. Sims, can I just go to the really big picture here? Because listening to the testimony, of course, we've gone from kind of the broader to the very specific. And it just strikes me listening to this testimony all over again that we've got so much change going on in terms of the delivery of healthcare across our country, not to mention just our veteran communities. And, we've got clearly outdated facilities. We've got, the telehealth that's taking off. We've got electronic medical records. We have interaction with other parts of our healthcare system, private and armed services, as I spoke to earlier. We have, decentralization and delivery. We have veterans living in quite remote places. And where is where does the big picture step back and look at the whole thing review stand right now? The modernization and realignment process, which is a controversial process. I know that, but where do you actually stand on that? Is that a moving target for you as you try to kind of nail down some priorities for the next generation?
Good question. So the effort of doing the market assessments is underway. It's been underway for a while now in relation to the Mission Act. That will become a repeating process. So the goal is that it happens once with the Air Commission, but then there's the similar market assessments that are done on a recurring basis so that you do take that step back and look at the big picture of not just VA and not just facilities, but healthcare delivery in general. I think it's safe to say that VA cannot do this alone. Yes, we have a major role in the nationwide healthcare network, training of doctors, research. We've got a huge role, but we've also got partners with DoD, and how can we expand on that with our academic affiliates, and how can we leverage those more, and private sector community providers. So the demand is so big that all of those need to be leveraged to create the partnerships that we need to be able to meet whatever that future looks like. Will it be a moving target? I think the answer is it'll always be a moving target, simply because the method and the technology supporting healthcare is changing so rapidly. So what we're trying to do when I talk recapitalization is to actually put facilities in place that are adaptable, that they're flexible, that they're modular, that they can provide different types of care in different modalities, depending on how the veterans, even if they need to be locally driven in some areas, how can we put facilities in place that will support different types of care in the future? And it's clear that some of the older facilities just aren't capable of doing that, but that broader look is something that will always be an updated target. It doesn't mean that we can't put facilities in place that are capable of supporting that.
Okay, I understand that. And then how does that play back into just kind of the decisions that have to be made on specific facilities? Because it strikes me that across the system, we just got a ton that are at the end of their useful life. At least if you define useful life as it would be better to replace them rather than to continue to maintain them. I mean, where does that big picture translate into the actual decisions you're making about whether to continue a maintenance project? Because I don't think any of us want to get into where I'm sure we are, which is kind of a drift towards, which is perhaps a larger problem in much of the federal government, which is, well, we can't face the music of actually the cost and effort of actually replacing, and so let's just get a few more years out of these facilities. But pretty soon you're just way past penny wise and pound foolish. So where are you trying to get to the bottom of that particular analysis?
So it's not an either or. I think it's a both. And our challenge has been, the focus has been what you just described, which is looking at the facilities individually where there's a need. So if there's a need to fix an air handler or an HVAC system at facility A, let's put a project in place to do something like that. That can't stop because of a larger recapitalization initiative. The recapitalization needs to give a different view of those facilities. So when we're looking at those individual projects, for example, through the SCIP process, we can look at those to say, is this facility something that we simply need to recapitalize and modernize holistically, take that single project off the table, but there's still a long list of projects that are needed at facilities that aren't necessarily at the end of their life. So it can't be an either or, it's got to be a both. We've got to look at it in both directions. So we're not needlessly investing in facilities that really do need to be replaced, but making sure that we are investing in facilities that need that interim upgrade or interim fix before we would get to a recapitalization.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you very much.